Hey y'all, so I wanted to do a little book update. It's been a little while since I did an update, and I want to say for the first time since I began, I feel a little bit like I'm coasting downhill. A little bit, like real close. I think over half of the recipes have been tested and done. Some of them are going to be reshot, which means I either remake them if I have to in order to photograph them, or it's an opportunity to retest if I feel like, that one could have been retested, it could benefit from it. But yeah, it feels really good, and I've been thinking about needing to take a look at my front matter, so just the introductory stuff that's not like the recipe related stuff. My word count is pretty high for around 100 recipe cookbook, so I do have a lot of word count that I can use for introductory stuff, whether that's like introductions to my chapters, or it's mostly going to be for the front matter, which will be about like a background on broths and stocks, a little bit of history, health information, some culinary terminology defined. And so actually today I grabbed my front matter that I had printed out several months ago. I like to work through on a hard copy, like printed out, because it's just the way my brain works. It's hard for me to type original thoughts on a computer. So I'm usually writing it down, and then I'll print it out. I'll type it up after I've written it down, and then when I want to edit or add to it, I'll kind of do it on that printout, which makes a little more work, but I feel like I can just get like better thoughts out that way. So that's my flow. And I'm looking through, and I remember like either right before I signed the contract or right after, I had a lot of ideas come to me for the book. And I remember sitting inside like on a Sunday, a couple of Sundays in a row, and just, like from what I remember, pretty much the whole day sitting in my room writing out these thoughts. And I thought, like, at the time I was like, oh, I'm gonna be spending so many days doing this, writing all this stuff down. And now that I'm looking back at it, it's so solid. Obviously it needs to be edited, but the information that's there is very solid, and I don't think I'm going to add much to it. I think it's pretty foundational, and I'm glad I did it that way because it kind of set off the way I wanted to frame my recipes in terms of the head notes and my approach to recipe writing. The way my recipes are written, they really concentrate on the technique and very kind of artfully, if I may say so, artfully weave in like descriptions and, yeah, for the most part, like subtle descriptions that are related to the technique. And it's fun because I looked back at like one of the first recipes that I tested and wrote out, and I was like, oh man, like my recipe voice has been honed tremendously just from testing so many recipes, writing them out, finding like, oh, these are the things I want people to pay attention to and learn while they're making the recipe, so that one, it comes out, there's a higher chance of it coming out properly when you cook it, and so you learn something along the way. So like in the recipes, I'll use specific culinary terminology, which will link back to the front of the book to where that technique is defined. For example, something like saute and sweat or shallow fry, sear, etc. All those culinary terms have specific meanings, and that's not to complicate things. It's really to give you a clearer idea of what you're doing cooking that recipe and why. Like, why does it impact the end result and the flavor and the timing of the recipe. So yeah, that's going to be really fun. But like I said, it's done in a way that's not overwhelming. It's not like you go into a recipe and you're like, oh, I have to like go through this whole lesson, so to speak, just to cook this recipe. It's not like that. It's really finessed the way that I weave those things in. Of course, I would recommend looking through the culinary terminology in the front before you cook my recipes. That will give you a richer understanding of what's being said in the recipe and things like that, or just like having a kind of mental note in your head about what the technique might be, or even like, oh yeah, I do want to refer back to that one technique, that was really interesting. So whatever works for you, but I really set up the book to be a learn as you go, so you're not necessarily having to read the front material in order to cook my recipes. That's not it. But the reason that I'm structuring it in the way I'm describing is two things. I pay attention to people's reaction to recipes, just kind of before this process and just throughout my life. I've paid attention to where people get tripped up in a recipe, and we might always assume that it's either the fault of the recipe writer or the fault of the cook not understanding. So I'm trying to bridge those two problems and make recipes more than just what they are at the moment, you know. I mean, I've seen some cookbooks where the recipes are written a little more artfully. They're a little more than just a set of directions. And I like that. I think that's important right now in a time where there's a whole lot of, how do I say this? I'm gonna frame it like this, and don't get mad, but I think we're at a time where we have lost the connection with cooking in real life. I don't know how to say it. Like, all right, so many of you, or a lot of you, have maybe gotten interested in cooking from watching TV or watching social media. And when you do that, you aren't cooking beside someone. So I think it's different than in, like, say, I don't know, my mom's generation, somewhat my generation, but it was fading at that point. But anyway, a little older than me, I think people were still learning to cook with their parents or their grandparents. And so you were learning with someone there, like in real life, and guiding you, answering your personal questions that you would have, and seeing like these little moments in depth, like being there. It's different than in a video. It's different than on TV when you cook with someone, needless to say. So yeah, I think we are in a time where it's like our recipes should be a little more descriptive. They should be a little more, I don't want to say hand-holding, because that implies that like you're not good enough or something, which I don't think that's true. I think everyone can learn to cook and learn to unlock like an intuitive part of it. Like, because cooking is a bit intuitive. It's really using your senses to make the meal. So you're using your eyes, you're using your sense of smell when you cook, and you're hearing things like the sizzle of when you put a piece of meat in. You should hear that sizzle if it's getting seared properly. And so I think because it involves all of these senses, it really is intuitive for most people. But there is such a skill element, an element of skill needed to cook well. And yeah, so I just think like when we like, and I do it too. I used to do it all the time, but when you scroll through videos and you're like, you have all these videos saved, like, yeah, I want to learn how to make that. Or like, oh, that looked rather easy. Like this person just whipped that up. I can do it. And then you go and try it, if you even like get that opportunity to try it, which is a hurdle in and of itself, making the time, getting the ingredients and actually doing it, venturing out into something new. Maybe you've never done that recipe before or anything like it. It can be harder than it looks. And yeah, so that's why my recipes are written the way they are, and that's why the book is being set up the way it is. So yeah, I'm really excited that it's getting close to the submission deadline, and I can't wait to share this book with you all. So that's it for now. Bye-bye.